beg to move that this House do now adjourn.
I'll just give the front bench a few moments to swap over. The question is that this House do now adjourn, and I call Victoria Collins.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. It is an honour to secure this debate on the impact of the autumn budget on high streets as my first adjournment debate, not just because it's such a vital topic, but because it is a topic dear to my heart. During my maiden speech to this House, I shared the story of helping my mum on the shop floor, and it only seems fitting that my first adjournment debate represents our high streets. Every night after school and most weekends, I used to go to my mum's gift shop and help out. I remember chatting away to the staff, the customers and our neighbouring businesses. I remember late nights sorting out items to donate to local charity, and the summer when I offered to run the shop myself. I also remember what happened when the economy turned, having to pack away stock and move to smaller premises because it was that or closure. I remember helping my parents with the mortgage as a teenager, gleefully buying broken biscuits as a family, and only now, later in life, realising how much work my parents put in to keep a roof over our heads and food on the table. After many successful years and opening several premises over those years, the cost of retail and business rates, the competition from online giants, and the decline in consumer spending was too much. My mum couldn't beat them, so she joined them and took her business online. In many ways, it was a relief for the family, a simpler way of continuing the business. But on the other hand, it was hard to see the store close 30 years after she first set up shop.
Will the honourable member give way?
I will give way.
I'm grateful to the honourable member. I think she's absolutely right about how sad it is to see high street shops closing, like those where she used to help. In Columpton, we've seen local councils invest in the high street, but this is sadly offset when you see these shop closures. So I wonder if in her adjournment speech she will make some recommendations to the government for what they could do to prevent some of those shop closures.
Absolutely. Thanks to my honourable friend for that intervention. And I think that's the heart of this debate, is to make sure that we look after those businesses and many more who could open. And the story that I share because this is why this is so important to me. I know that the story of our high streets is the story of our local communities. I'm going to make a little bit of progress and then I will give way. The families behind the doors, the families and local people who shop there, the high streets that are truly at the heart of the community. I have the honour of representing 7 high streets across Harpenden and Berkhamsted, and I'm grateful to those local businesses who responded to my survey for this debate. What I'm sharing today is their voice, and sharing the impact it will have on their businesses, their livelihoods, their families and our community. I will give way. Oh, well,
I thank my honourable friend for giving way. Responding to my small business survey, a local business in Street said that high employer NICs is one of the major challenges and that it could force them to cancel some of their investment plans. So does my honourable friend agree with me that these measures that are being proposed don't encourage growth and could instead push more high street businesses to close, significantly impacting already the fragile rural economy?
Thank you to my honourable friend. Absolutely. Sadly, the desperation that came through in my survey is something that a lot of businesses are very worried about their future. And with that, I will give.
Thank you very much. Like the honourable lady, my mum and dad were shopkeepers, and we had a shop in Ballywater from 15.
Beg to move that this House do now adjourn.
The question is that this House do now adjourn. I'll ask Victoria Collins to stand and then she can take the intervention shortly again.
I will take an intervention.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. From 59 to 79, my mum and dad had a shop in Ballywater and a shop before that as well. So there's been a history of having shops. But today's high street in Newton Ours, and take the example of that one, the issues of national insurance contribution, of wages, of theft and attacks upon hospitals, upon shop staff, is all the issues that they now face. So does the Honourable Lady agree with me that today this high street needs help like it never needed it ever before?
Absolutely, and that's very much in line with that feedback I had, and it is with that and the feedback from those businesses that it is with much disappointment that I share the impact of the autumn budget on my local businesses. It's no secret that the Conservatives left our economy in a mess. Many of our businesses are still reeling from this, but that is exactly why it's important for the government to get this right, and many of the proposals in the autumn budget will not lead to growth on our high streets. I'd like to have faith that Labour intended to do the right thing, but these are unintended consequences.
Will the Honourable Member give way, please, briefly?
I'll just make a little bit of progress and then give way. I hope that the government may heed some of these warnings and take action to mitigate the impact and change course. In the words of one director in my constituency, it is a disaster. All planned investment has been cancelled, expansion plans cancelled, prices will go up on the 1st of April by at least 10%, and we're looking at ways to reduce staff count. I'll give way.
Thank you very much. Would my honourable friend agree with me that the high streets of Tiverton and Minehead, as well as every other constituency in the country, will be hurt by this government's decision to lower the amount of relief offered to retail, hospitality and leisure businesses from 75% to 40%, and that they should instead be looking at replacing business rates with an entirely new commercial landowner levy rather than tinkering around the edges, making an already bad system worse? Yeah.
Thank you for that intervention. Indeed, that's one of the main topics that have come up. But what businesses also shared is that after facing the impact of Brexit, closures during COVID, cuts to local infrastructure following Conservative cuts to local government, and the soaring costs from the cost of living crisis, the combination of measures from the autumn budget, which include the rise in national insurance contribution, the change of business rates that were just mentioned, and the increase of minimum wage, as well as proposed changes that could impact family businesses, they are now reaching crisis point. Businesses I speak to are largely supportive of an increase in minimum wage. I'd like to highlight that because they want to support their staff, but it is the combination of all these factors after such a difficult time that is devastating. The knock-on impact of this combination has also seen preemptive costs rising across supply chains and worries about consumer confidence, ultimately spending less on our high streets. Although the GfK Consumer Confidence Index in the UK rose by 1 point last December, confidence levels remain subdued and retail sales in the UK unexpectedly declined 0.3% month on month last December. This moment in the calendar is often the most critical time for retail and hospitality on our high streets. Coming back to national insurance contributions for employers, these are a pre-profit cost increase. Not only does this cost need to be managed, but that means for businesses who are just about breaking even or making a loss, this will tip them over the edge and drastically cut the cash flow, often key for investment. The well-loved local Lusman's restaurant in Hertfordshire have been serving local people for 22 years and face around £250,000 off the bottom line, leading to reduced investment in our local area. Temptation Gifts will see similar, if not higher, costs and say that for the first time in 42 years, they will be shortening opening hours as part of the cost-saving measures. And they're making difficult staffing decisions for a business the family have built over decades. My constituent Charlotte, managing director of the oldest family-run jewellers in the UK, shares that the mix of the higher national insurance and higher minimum wage means they won't hire any more staff and anyone who leaves will not be replaced. Almar in Tring, where Caroline and her husband already work long days, say that the national insurance contributions will be a big issue in their running costs and don't know how they can cope working even longer. Chiltern Opticians in Tring highlights the barriers in hiring staff for small businesses and say that they are very different to big corporations that have large teams of HR to handle the staffing issues, and we just don't have the budget for it. These are resilient businesses, or they have been. They want to continue to build those businesses, continue to employ local people, and indeed there's a pride that I see in supporting local staff, often calling them family. And when I hear Jordan from Graces and Tring say, we are more like a community centre at times, providing essential services to the community, I hear my mum's voice, who so often did the same. Our pubs, restaurants and cafes in Harpenden and Berkhamsted cover 197 hospitality venues that employ over 6,000 people and generate nearly 143 million in revenue. These businesses are indeed the backbone of our economy and community. The government say they're protecting small businesses, but these are those small businesses they talk of. Indeed, the official definition of an SME is a company with less than 250 employees. The growing, local, often family-run businesses that are nowhere close to being the international giants that have started to dominate retail or hospitality. These local businesses are happy to pay their way. Andre says, I have no issue with tax rises, but these are positioned poorly. The vast majority of the high street are SMEs and they will be hit the hardest. And yet, sadly, the desperation is clear. They are worried that this budget will be the final straw. Participants in my local survey said, what is the point of a small business? The high street is dying. So when it comes to national insurance contributions, will the government consider mitigations to support these local businesses on our high streets? This could include a lower rate of NICs for earnings between 5,000 to the 9,100 threshold, or a lower rate for lower earning taxpayers who work part-time, perhaps fewer than 20 hours. As we've heard from many local businesses, this is to help get more people working and support our local economy. At the very least, will the government consider delaying implementation in order to give businesses time to adjust and consider their mitigation?
Thank you, Speaker. May I intervene, please?
Yes.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I wonder if the Minister would consider the following. I've been asked to come to the island of Skye for a crisis meeting on Saturday. And there is a group of hotel owners which are family-owned businesses. They're not big multinationals. And they're facing an awful combination of increases from heating price increases across the board. But their number one issue is national insurance and minimum wage. And they think that their costs on average will go up between £40,000 and £70,000. They are in a very poor state indeed. And I wonder if the Minister could give me any encouragement that I could possibly take to them and pass on her behalf. Thank you very much.
Intervention was on the member, so the question goes to her, and she can obviously insist on the Minister responding. Victoria Collins.
My right honourable friend who highlights some of those issues, one thing actually which I have not covered in my speech, but it's actually energy costs, and that did come through. A lot of my local businesses have said that the rise in energy costs is something very important to consider, and I'm sure the Minister will also consider some of the other comments my right honourable friend made. In terms of business rates, there's a similar story of despair. The Robin Hood pub found that their business rates will now double. Grace and Son say that our business rates are already a huge overall cost to the business that seem disproportionate given our premises are relatively small, and increasing them will put even more strain on our already stretched budget. Mark from Tabouret, both in Harpenden and Berkhamsted, said there will be yet another increase in the national minimum wage, this time above inflation. Alcohol duty will increase on the 1st of February. Business rates are set to increase in April, along with various increases in national insurance, and this budget is devastating. So would the government consider abolishing the broken business rate system and replace it with a commercial landover levy? Would the government consider delivering the maximum discount allowed by the budget to support hospitality of smaller high street businesses? I wish that I had the time to dive into all of the issues raised by local businesses, but I will just focus on two more. Many are worried about high street services such as parking. With Conservatives' cuts to local councils and funding cut again and again, many services such as parking and investment of our high streets have had to be cut as well. Given the commitment to local communities by the government, will they also ensure that budget investment in local councils also compensates for the increase in national insurance contributions councils will have to pay to help councils have the money to invest in our high streets and related services? Another issue is that several family businesses have highlighted the devastating impact when it comes to proposed changes to inheritance tax. Mike and his wife have worked week in, week out for over 40 years and in their 70s are still working full-time to support the business and their employees. They say they've taken low dividends, looked after staff and hope to hand over the business to their children. But proposed changes mean the business may have to be pulled apart. For Charlotte and their family business, removing the 100% BPR will mean they will not be able to stay in the building they have been in for 2 centuries. Will the government carry out a proper impact assessment on inheritance tax for family businesses, notably where those assets will stay within the business that support our local communities? I would once again like to thank all the businesses that have contacted me, and I'm sorry I couldn't mention all of them today. The issues highlighted are also highlighted similarly by local charities, healthcare providers, and indeed businesses beyond the high streets that cover Harpenden, Berkhamsted, Tring, Redbourne, Flamstead, Markyate, and Potten End. I would suggest that the Minister meet or continue to meet with these businesses up and down the country. Indeed, Caroline from Elmar has invited the Chancellor to come and see firsthand the challenges of running a high street shop, and pleased with the Government to look at measures to mitigate the impact and help our high streets thrive. I'd like to end with a message of hope. I'd like to envisage a day where you can head to your local high street in Harpenden, Tring, Redbourne, or any high street in the UK. There's proper public transport investment, so it's easy to pop on the bus. There's investment in our walkways and cycleways. You can just get down easily, or you could maybe even find a parking space. The high street is a vibrant place full of local, thriving businesses. You can drop your kids off nearby at local creche, or easily head to the doctors and relax with your friends and family after a busy day or a sunny day. That's when the sun does come out in the UK. Our high streets up and down this country are a real experience. They've been invested in, and those local businesses are thriving. The beating heart of our community is alive, thriving, and no longer on life support. With the right investment and incentives, and with adjustments to the autumn budget, we must start that journey.
Hear, hear.
Here.
I call the Minister, Emma Reynolds.
Madam Deputy Speaker, let me first congratulate the Honourable Lady for Harpenden and Berkhamsted for securing this debate, and I wanted to start by thanking her for sharing her story of working in her mum's gift shop, and I think that was a very moving story to hear that she had direct experience of working in a shop on the high street. I wanted to thank her also for the survey that she did of the local small businesses in her 7 high streets. I think that's an impressive number of high streets, and she outlined very well the importance of the businesses there. I think she said there were 197 retail, hospitality and leisure businesses employing some 6,000 people. I'd like to thank her for sharing those statistics and the feedback from the businesses. I share the Honourable Member's passion for the regeneration of our high streets. I think it's a concern for members across this House. They are focal points of economic activity, but most importantly, and she said this in her speech, they're often a key part of the unique character of our communities. We know that high street businesses are contending with a range of challenges, and again, she listed some of these, but I'd like to list a couple. Notably, changing consumer shopping habits, the rise of online shopping, and a series of economic headwinds, including during the pandemic, which we know was particularly difficult for small independent businesses on the high street. The Government is committed to reforming Britain's economy to bring about a decade of national renewal, and creating an environment in which our high streets are able to flourish is critical to that commitment. In her speech, she recognised the dire economic inheritance of this Government from the Conservatives, none of whom seem to be in their place. We had some very difficult decisions to make at the budget, but it was necessary to wipe the slate clean, to deliver the economic stability that high street businesses need, and also we have set out...
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I wonder if the Minister would consider why tax would put on the poor struggling organisations like the shops in High Street and the hotels, rather than, for example, the massive online businesses which are indeed emptying our high street, or indeed on higher rate of corporation tax or income tax, rather than hitting the very poorest businesses in our society. Thank you.
Well, he preempts my following sentence, so I thank him for that. We have committed to reforming business rates because we need a fairer system which is fit for the 21st century, and I'll come on to that in a couple of minutes in my speech, and I think it's an important part of our reforms and plans that I hope will benefit the businesses that the Honourable Lady spoke about in her speech. I will give way.
Madam Deputy Speaker, in recent weeks I've been working with an excellent organisation called Family Business UK, and before Christmas they did some research into the impact of APR and BPR on family businesses. They're about to do another round of research, and I wondered if the Minister's officials would like to avail themselves on the results of that research to put things in a better context.
Ministers are always happy to hear from honourable members. I suggest that she writes to the Exchequer Secretary with that feedback. This isn't actually my policy area, I should note. The Exchequer Secretary is visiting small businesses as we speak, so that is why I am standing in for him, but I'm sure he will welcome that feedback from the Honourable Lady. I've listened carefully to the Honourable Lady and I've tried to note down all of her questions, but if I don't get to all of them, then I'd be very happy to write to her, and after this debate, I hope that's helpful. So she asked whether there were any mitigations or whether we could. I think she was asking us to cancel some of the plans from the budget. I'm afraid I can't give her that assurance. These changes in national insurance will come into force on the 1st of April this year. As I set out, these are difficult decisions, and that was one of the most difficult decisions that we had to take. She also asked whether we are meeting or would we meet small businesses. The Exchequer Secretary is meeting with a range of small businesses, as are Treasury officials, in formulating our plan to reform business rates, which I'll talk about very briefly in a minute. She asked some other questions about IHT, which I will write to her about in order to make sure that I get the right answer. And she also asked a question about local government, and I wasn't entirely sure of the question, so perhaps we can clarify that, and I can write to her as well about that. Let me turn to her points about national insurance in a bit more detail. One of the toughest decisions we took at the budget was to raise the rate of employer national insurance contributions from 13.8% to 15%. But we did recognise the need to protect the smallest businesses, and the Federation of Small Businesses asked us specifically on this issue, which is why we have more than doubled the employment allowance to £10,500, meaning that more than half of businesses with national insurance contributions liabilities either see no change at all or are taking out of paying national insurance contributions. This, as I said, was a key demand from small businesses. To support businesses, including those on the high street, the budget also honoured the manifesto commitment to not raise corporation tax and set out this tax roadmap over the course of this Parliament not to change corporation tax, which means we have the lowest rate in the G7. All of this will support businesses from restaurants to retailers in order to invest. For the high street, we also announced at the budget major support for pubs, cutting alcohol duty on qualifying draft products, approximately 60% of the alcoholic drinks sold in pubs. This represents an overall reduction in duty bills of over 85 million a year and is equivalent to a 1p duty reduction on a typical pint. She raised concerns about the business rate system, so let me address those in a little more detail. We very much believe that for too long the business rate system has placed an unfair burden on high street retail, hospitality and leisure businesses, and she mentioned this in her speech. To support these sectors, we intend to introduce permanently lower tax rates for retail, hospitality and leisure properties with rateable values of less than £500,000 from 26-27. This will allow us to provide stability after the ongoing uncertainty of the one-year retail, hospitality and leisure relief, which has been extended year by year since the pandemic. This tax cut will be sustainably funded, not by increases in taxes on working people, which we promise not to do, but through a higher tax rate on the most valuable 1% of business properties in the country. This will capture the majority of large distribution warehouses, including those used by online giants, as well as other out-of-town businesses that draw footfall away from high streets. These business rates reforms provide the certainty that businesses need to invest while protecting the public finances. The government has already introduced primary legislation to the House that will provide the underpinning for these reforms, and the exact rates for the new multipliers will be confirmed later this year in the autumn budget. Yes, I will.
For giving way. In Glastonbury and Somerton, many of my rural town centres and the businesses within them are really worried about business rates. So would she consider implementing a fundamental overhaul for those small businesses, specifically in rural areas?
I'm afraid that we need to treat all small businesses equally, and I understand her perspective, but I don't think it would be fair, and it wouldn't be easy either, to have a business rate system that distinguish between rural and non-rural. What is rural? Is it, I know the Honourable Lady's constituency rather well because I live not too far away. Tring is obviously a town, but there'll be other places in her constituency that would be quite difficult to categorise rural or non-rural. So I don't think we can go down that route. I understand why the Honourable Lady is trying to tempt us down that route, but I don't think that would work. Yes, of course I would give way.
Thank you. The Minister talks about business rates, and actually I am in, as you said, you mentioned Tring or Hertfordshire. The problem is, and a lot of what of my businesses have mentioned, is that actually the rateable value is very high because property costs are very high, even though actually what they sell might be of lower value. So the difficulty is that they are paying a lot when actually their business may not have a high turnover. And just to ask the Minister to ask the government to consider mitigation where actually they are running a business in a very high, in an area of high property cost.
I'm here in my ministerial capacity, of course, but I also represent High Wycombe in the South East, so I understand the point that she is making very well, and I promise to take that back to the department and to the Exchequer Secretary. I very much understand the point she's making. Levelling the playing field for the High Street is just the start, and we are committed to transforming the whole system in the longer term. As we set out in the Transforming Business Rates policy paper that we published alongside the budget, the government will create a fairer business rate system that protects the high street, supports investment and is fit for the 21st century. It's important we work in partnership with high street businesses to get these reforms right, and I thank again the Honourable Lady for bringing that small business voice to our proceedings today from her constituency. Government officials have undertaken a series of roundtable events to understand from businesses across all sectors and sizes how they think reform of the system can best be delivered. Over 200 businesses have already given their feedback at these roundtables. The Exchequer Secretary to the Treasury is leading this work and is engaging with a broad range of high street businesses, and so indeed are officials in my department. I will give way, of course.
To the Minister. And I appreciate it's the Exchequer Secretary who would perhaps know this, but in the reform of business rates that the government is proposing, will the government make sure that it doesn't, it's not negative for those small businesses with a very small rateable value that don't currently pay business rates at all?
Indeed. That is the point of the reforms, to better protect small businesses. There are already small businesses, as he says, who are protected, but we want to ensure that those small businesses that are above the current thresholds are protected and don't pay the same rates they're paying at the moment. We want to ensure that small businesses on the high street are better supported. That's the whole point of the reform. So it won't get worse for small businesses. I can reassure him of that. I know that much. It may be the Exchequer Secretary's area, but I know that much. So thank you. Thank him for that opportunity to respond to that question. We look forward to further engagement with these businesses over the coming months to deliver a business rate system that is fit for the future. Madam Deputy Speaker, again I want to thank the Honourable Member for Harpenden and Berkhamsted for bringing her first adjournment debate. This is my first adjournment debate to be responding to as a Minister, and for raising this important issue. This government has delivered the economic stability that high street businesses need to thrive, and we are committed to delivering the business rate reforms which will support high streets up and down the country.
The question is that this House do now adjourn. As many as that opinion say aye? Aye. The ayes have it. Order, order,